but I am using one kind of an inch tape where it is giving only 98. The inch tape is having the error. So what is the meaning? The tool itself is having the error. Once the tool itself is having the error, how the assessment output will give the proper feedback to the teacher? So it is not at all possible. So we have to follow a scientific principle, that is a design of specification table. It's a functional table. So if you follow the table, then you can bring the question paper with the proper validity and a proper functional way. It will give the proper tool will deliver the correct output, and as well as you will get the proper output from the student. Then the fifth unit is rubrics. Okay, so already you had a detailed session about rubrics from Professor Shashikant Gupta. He explained about how the rubrics, how rating scales, how checklist we have to use. So how we, those things. So those things specifically we used one unit, how to do the performance assessment. Then in the sixth unit, checking the validity, what I wanted to measure, what I intend to assess, that is what very much important. See, whether the third year student or a fourth year student, I wanted to assess the mathematical ability or their concept or their understanding on the particular concept or a diagram or a circuit diagram. So that ability I wanted to assess, or I wanted to assess the mathematical addition, subtraction ability, what ability I use. Such a way I set the question paper so that even the students, see, doesn't mean that the students should make the error in arithmetic ability, they should be fined or penalties there. Not like that. So the meaning is, see, in that level, when the student is second year engineering student, the question should target the ability what I'm expecting. I think most of the institutions nowadays, they are moving to NBA. You are all aware that very much about the outcomes. Maybe this course also we have discussed about the how to prepare, because outcome is the fundamental for prepare the question paper. So you are all aware outcomes. So 5 outcomes, suppose you prepare for the course, right? These 5 outcomes easily can be converted as a questions, because outcome is a functional statement. So easily that 5 outcomes can be converted as a question. But these 5 questions are enough to set a test, because that 5 outcomes are covering the whole syllabus. So these 5 outcomes are enough, or the 5 questions are enough to test the student ability on the course. Normally it is not. The reason behind is here, we need the sample. The sample is a wide sample. So we have a part A, we have a part B, we have a part C. The number of questions are more. Then we are testing and we are getting the reliable score or not. That is what we wanted to discuss on the estimate the reliability of your question set. Then interpret the assessment score. Normally we end up with the question paper, but here the item analysis also play the role after the examination. How really the student learned the subject, how the performance of the student. Maybe you have an internal assessment 1 or internal assessments 2. I want to analyze the marks. Then I wanted to get some feedback on the based on the score. Then whether the student have a normally the learning is growth is there or not, or the question paper what I used, which is only assess the very fundamental ability of the student. It's not assessing the higher order ability of the student. So that way I wanted to bring. So item analysis will give the feedback on that. Then the 9th unit is nothing but it's completely on how there's so many tools you have learned in the morning. Dr. Janardhan explained different kind of tools, but there are different tools we can use it for assessment purpose alone. Even in the classroom or in your laboratory, or when you are conducting Viva or whatever laboratory, wherever you wanted to run your class, you can have a different tool to particularly for assessment. So those tools we have discussed in the 9th unit. So that way we have prepare the outcome, and we have had 8 unit totally. The 8 unit has 8 units have 9 outcomes. Let me go with the basic, fundamentally the importance of the assessment, because that is the fundamental to move to the unit 1. So the assessment is integral part. It is very much important for teaching learning process to get the feedback. At the same time, there are many factors influenced in the assessment, how to handle those factors, how normally student perceptions about the assessment, whether the student thinking that the assessment is a threatening tool or really they feel that assessment is the progress, it is improving my progress. How many students they are thinking that when the teacher is asking the question, yeah, the teacher is very good and the teacher is very particular, care about me, the teacher wanted to make me to learn. How many students are thinking like that? Or the students feel that I am simply sitting why the teacher is asking the question, whether the teacher is threatening me or not. How the student perception. Then the components of the assessment, like a purpose or a measurement or interpretation or use, how the things. Then different type of assessment, that is a placement. Maybe when you enter to the class, during the class, end of the class or end of the semester, how the types of assessment play the role. So all the things, all the components are very much important. So these components only placed in these 8 modules. So these components only placed in the 8 modules. So that way, let me move to the Unit 1. Unit 1 contents are introduction to assessment, languages of assessment, because so some fundamental we must aware, so different forms of assessment, then diagnostic, formative, summative, then how we have to do the questioning skill. Maybe you are all aware assessment. What exactly assessment? What is the procedure you follow to conduct the examination? So a test is the procedure. How you are giving the values, that is a measurement. So those technical terms about the student assessment and evaluation, we started from that. Then we moved to, before starting the class, how we have to approach the questions. Suppose there are different kind of questioning techniques we have discussed in this course. Before I start the class, sometime your teacher is asking the students what we have discussed in the yesterday class. What is the meaning? Why they are asking these questions? Actually, during the class, why the teacher is asking the question, whether the teacher is asking the question just, sometimes the questions are different in nature, isn't it? Sometimes the teacher, are you able to follow like they are asking the question? Sometimes they are identifying the student asking the question. So in between the class, how we are assessing the students and we are doing, and how the formative assessment play the role. Then see, at the end we want to rank, certification, ranking. So for that also this assessment play the role. So how that is a summative assessment play the role. Then as already I told you, to follow the different questioning techniques which engage the students in learning and fostering students self-monitoring of their learning. I wanted to aware whether my learning is perfect or not, whether I am progressing or not, how I understand myself. So that way, the questioning techniques as well as assessment as learning. So lifelong learning also very much important. Sometimes we talk about evaluative kind of learning. There are different kind of learning: creative learning, integrative learning, evaluative learning. So how the evaluative learning is help to lifelong learning, that is also we discussed in the Unit 1. So here, this I will share basically the definitions of each and everything. But when you go to the course, you can see the definitions of each and everything, so that these definitions will be helpful when you are going to use the same term in our course. Whenever the terms we are using in our course, these terms very much you can go with that one. Then the second thing is, as already I told you, questioning skill. Maybe people use post, pass, pounce. Triple P model they are using for questioning. Sometimes pose a question directly to a student. Post, pass, pounce means what they are doing. First they are posing the questions, then giving the pass, then identify the student. Why? Because they wanted to make every student to think. Once you pose the question, you are not identifying the student, then everyone will think the teacher may point to me. Then you identify the student, then what will happen? Everyone will think, and everyone will look for the student who you identified, and they are checking whether my answer is matching with the answer who is whatever that the boy is telling. So that way they will watch. So by the way, everyone think about the answer. The other way people are saying, experts are saying that apple means announce the question, then pass the question, then I can point a particular person, then listen the answer, then emphasize the answer. That is what the new term they found, like Apple technique we have to use in the classroom. Sometimes we can ask the student, suppose you find that the student is not listening, then pose the question, immediate feedback. So these are all the things we have covered in the Unit 1, particularly stimulate critical thinking among the students in the classroom. So how to bring it, how the questioning, different kind of a questioning make the student to think, whether student they feel that whether my failure is failure or my failure is learning, how they feel. So that I wanted to bring. So that way, the questioning techniques we have used, particularly for rhetorical questions. In between my class, I wanted to make the question, just it is a humor oriented. I am not expecting that the answer from the student, just a humor oriented. That way, the rhetorical. So all kind of questioning techniques we have used in the classroom. So how to use these things that we have discussed there. Then when we come to the second unit, define the outcome, because educational goals start and end up with the because in the vision, then end with the learning outcomes. So learning outcomes are become a questions in the question paper. Learning outcomes are converted as a questions in the question paper. So prepare the question is very much important. For that, defining the learning outcome is very much important. So define the learning outcome, how to define it, revised Bloom's taxonomy we followed. So how this taxonomy help to define the outcome in a two-dimensional table, that we have discussed in the unit 2. So that way you are all aware that whenever you write, maybe you can write one question in your notebook, and you can see the question can be divided as a two component. One component is nothing but ability. Suppose I say define a particular theorem. So define is the ability you are expected. The theorem on what the subject, that is nothing but the content. Explain. Then explain is the ability what you are expected. Explain 8086 microprocessor and its architecture. So that is the content. So any question you can divide as a two component. The same when you talk about outcome, what ability need to be demonstrated and what content. So that way, I just mapping the outcome with the question. So such a way, when we are bringing the question, you can divide a question as a two component. When we are preparing the question, when we are preparing the outcome, then it can be converted as a question here. Fine. So that way that unit 2 talks about determining the objectives of the assignment, learning question, instruction question, assessment question, alignment question. These 4 questions talks about issues and concern about educational system. So what I wanted to learn as a student, what I have to learn for this course. Then what strategy we have to use to deliver the course so that the student can learn. How I can get the feedback from the student so that I can change my strategy of instruction so the student get learn. Then the students, they know what they have to learn. Then I am selecting the appropriate strategy to deliver the technique based on the feedback I'm getting from the student. Then my delivery and the student learning happened or not. So we are talking about assessment question. So that way assessment question come role. But the delivery and alignment, see, the learning, instruction, assessment, all 3 aligned or not, that we'll talk about alignment questions. So these components we have discussed there. Then mapping two-dimensional approach. Actually, the content is dynamic in nature. So every day the content changed. So the content is dynamic in nature. So that way the cognitive dimension where you can have a two-dimensional approach in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. One is called knowledge dimension. The second one is called the cognitive process dimension. The knowledge dimension, you can have a 4 kind of a knowledge, like a factual what, then conceptual why, then procedural what is called how, then metacognitive self-learning, why not, I can do my own self-realization. So that way metacognitive. So when the what, why, how, these are all the content keep on changing, depend upon the new invention, new innovation, all those things. But these things mapped with the ability, the cognitive process dimension starts from the your remember to end with creative. So that way, this two-dimensional table here we have used. So to define the outcome for the learning, to differentiate between learning question, instruction question, assessment question, and alignment question, to differentiate knowledge dimension constructs. See, suppose I want to ask the question basically on factual, but factual is very much important. So without retention, that the student cannot think. In the vacuum, the student cannot think. So the knowledge component, the basic knowledge components are very much important. Then how this content can be applied into the context, that is what the why come to picture. So that way, how the differentiate different knowledge dimension constraint to explain the cognitive dimension constraint, how to map the particular outcome, map between the knowledge dimension and the cognitive process dimension that way. Then to identify the complexity of the outcome with respect to knowledge dimension and cognitive dimension process. For example, to apply the reduce, reuse, recycle approach to conservation. So I say that this particular outcome plays a role on procedure and apply. So that way, I wanted to see the complexity of the particular outcome. So any outcome when you define, what is the complexity of the outcome? Why? Because once I understand the complexity of the outcome, then only the instruction strategies I can properly select. So that way this will play the role. So that way only then that assessment part will come. The assessment part will come. So that way this is the fundamental. So that we have discussed in the unit 2. Then we come to the unit 3. So you know that defining of outcomes, then you know about the fundamental strategies. But when you are setting the question paper, when you are setting the questions, what are the different kind of questions are available? Maybe we know that 2 mark questions. Generally, we follow 2 mark questions. Then part B we have some short answers. Like a 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, like a part B. Then part C, we can have a essay type of question where descriptive answers, that kind of a question. But these are all the only questions or any other kind of a questions. So that way, how to prepare a question? What is the guideline to prepare the question? Because I have so many question paper we have discussed in the course, in the MOOC course. See, write all you know about the particular. What is the meaning? Whether the question is very clarity with the right of what you all know about. Then sometime, what is Ohm's law? What is Ohm's law? Define Ohm's law. What is the difference between what is Ohm's law, define Ohm's law? So how we are asking the question? So that way, how we have to prepare the question and what are the guidelines we have, the scientific procedure we have to follow when we are going to prepare the question, that we discussed in the unit 3 in our MOOC. So that way we start with direct assessment strategies, then we have indirect assessment strategies, then maximum performance, that is aptitude test, all maximum performance tests, then typical performance, that is the behavior of the student. Actually, in the maximum performance, we have a construction achievement test, how we have to prepare a question paper. So those things we have discussed. Then construction of achievement test. Then types of questions like a supply type, selection type, when whether the fill in the blank really is how I can use the fill in the blank itself in a higher education level. In higher education, actually we have a tool where this tool we are delivered into many engineering colleges. How the fill in the blank itself we can consider for a 5 mark question. What is the challenge I can put into the fill in the blank? So that way the selection type questions, then numerical problem solving, how we can prepare the problem solving method. In fact, we have a different interview mechanism with the different faculty, professors of universities, how each subject, the problem solving questions can be prepared. Then connect them with the context, maybe mechanical engineering, how to connect with the context, and electrical engineering, how to connect with the context, electronics engineering. So those things we have discussed there. So differentiate between direct and indirect strategies, differentiate between maximum and typical performance, classify the different type of test item in their category, then to apply the guidelines, to set the selection type and the supply type questions. For example, I have here, you can see the test items, so that supply type and the selection type. So this unit give the detailed scientific principle behind each type of a question paper. For example, you take MCQ. MCQ normally we use for 1 question, then 4 answer. 4 options. So among the 4 options, 1 key. But how I can bring the MCQ itself for relationship analysis? This and this are correct. Then what about this? So so much complexity you can bring into even MCQ. Then I can have a question where 4 statements are there. Then among the 4 statements, 1 and 2 are correct, 3 and 4 are correct. How to bring such kind of a complexity? So all the things we have discussed in the course. Then the short answer question like a completion type and a single answer type. Then essay type of question where we have discussed about the where we have to use completely open-ended question, then where we have to use the structured essay question, how the structured essay question can improve the reliability of the scoring. So those things we have discussed. Then how we have to prepare the numerical problem solving questions. So these things we have discussed in the unit 3. Right? Particularly when we come to indirect strategies, this normally we are not doing, but generally after the semester, I would like to know what is the overall progress or my student learning experience. See, what they are learning is direct assessment. What is their learning experience? That is indirect. So the learning experience I wanted to know from my students. So by the time I'm giving the survey, maybe initially I'm giving the survey, end of the course I'm giving the survey, then I can see really my students have a very good experience during my course in the 6th semester, the entire semester, the particular semester. So that I wanted to bring. So by the time you can use the survey, or when they go for internship or wherever, so that indirect assessment strategies are play the role. So how we have to prepare those things that we will discussed in the unit 3. Then to follow the guidelines to convert open. So how to convert the open-ended questions to structured essay questions, to select appropriate question item for the assessment and evaluation based on analysis of a problem. Because I cannot say that where I can use the 2-mark question, I cannot use the essay type of question. Where I can use the subjective answer question, I cannot use the objective type of question. So I know about what are the pros and cons. As a teacher, I must aware. So I have to select appropriate questioning in the classroom as well as in the question paper, to prepare problem solving questions and mini projects to access the student knowledge. Because in one interview, one professor said, in every semester, whenever I do my course, I give one mini project. So the students parallelly develop their mini project. At the end of the semester, I spend my time and sit with the group. It's a group project. I sit with each group and I evaluate. So it's like I teach, but I'm not expecting the development or the mini project what they do only on my teaching. What they have learned, their learning should be more than what I taught in the semester. So that way, I wanted to know from my students. So by the way, I always give a mini project. So one professor gave. So those interviews also be placed in the unit 3. Fine. Then in the unit 4, this is what is called very important unit, particularly in the student assessment and evaluation. So design of question paper. So design of question paper, we talk about table of specification. So the table of specification is a 2-dimensional table, because you see, when you are going to set the question paper, the universities are having its own policies. What is the policy? Each unit you have to ask this much, 20 marks. For suppose example, I have 5 units, then I have to ask 20 marks from each unit. That is what university rule. In some universities, they have a mark like a part of 5 questions, 10 questions. So each unit from 2 questions. In a B part, we can have an equal sharing of that. But part C can be from any unit. So this is the teacher can decide which unit is more important for further learning as well as to their career, based on that part C questions, a challenging question that way. So the universities are following the norms, how we have to set the question. But at the same time, the universities are saying that in each unit you have to bring this mark. But as a faculty member, you have a freedom in each unit how much rememberability you wanted to bring or you wanted to expect from the student, how much application ability you are expected from the student, how much analyzability you are expected to the student. So those things. So once you are defining the outcome, this outcome expected the analyzability of the student. These outcomes are application ability of the student that I wanted to bring. So those freedoms are with you. Those freedoms are with you. Maybe in a question paper, I take the question paper, then I just formulate a question paper like what are all the questions are coming from the factual knowledge with remember level. What are all the questions are coming from the applications, procedural and conceptual knowledge. Like I want to differentiate the questions. Suppose more questions are in the area of application analysis with conceptual and procedural. That question is really testing the student knowledge based on the outcome. Anyhow, it has to be based on the outcome. So whether it is really testing the application knowledge or only testing the remember and the factual knowledge, that you can bring it. So when you wanted to prepare this kind of question paper, then the table of specification is very much important. So this unit explained the principles of table of specification with respect to abilities and content. Because in the table of specification, this is the table, so normal, simple template where one, side you can, one dimension you can have a ability, the another dimension you can have a content. Already I told you the content is nothing but the knowledge. Okay, because content is the knowledge. So that content is the other one side and your abilities are other side. So how I can fill this table so that this table will help me to prepare the questions that we have discussed in the unit 4. So assign the weightage for various units of the content, to identify the expected ability of the unit of the content, to specify the scores in each cell of the TOS with respect to the content and the expected ability. So these are the things we have discussed. To prepare the question item to match with the score respect to the content and expected ability. Then last thing, how I have to map this table with the guideline of university or policies of the university that we have discussed here. Then as well as to ensure each part of the question paper, such as part A, part B, part C, whatever, is designed with appropriate complexity, how we have to bring it. So whether this question is appropriate for part A. Actually, when we went for many training program in engineering colleges, some faculty members asked, sir, in part A, one question is very, very basic definition question. In the same part A, the 2 mark where the question is so complex. How I can put a complex question also in part A? How it is also possible to put a question which is very in the recall level also in the part A? Is it possible? Actually, we used to say, see, whenever you go and put the part A questions, you have to see how much mark allotted for the question. So according to that complexity. So that way, how we have to bring it? So much complexity is there in the question, then how you have to bring the question in the part C, so that the structure is a question when you make it, where you can bring this question. So that way, we can. So more or less, the complexity should be equal when we do the part A. So that way, how to ensure that each part of the question paper, such as part A, part B, and part C, is designed with the appropriate complexity. So these are the things we have discussed in. They can have a appropriate learning target. They have a file. Maybe Professor Sashikant Gupta explained about e-portfolio.